Hi, this is Ian Powell in the Blackwater Lodge back again. We're, as I said before, in Southern Ireland, and we're on the Cork Blackwater, one of the biggest salmon fisheries in the country. We get a lot of fish coming through the door. In the previous video I showed you some of the tricks that we use in order to cut up the fish, and in that one I kept a couple of fillets aside which I intend to make Gravlax from, which to me is absolutely the nicest way to eat salmon. It's a Scandinavian recipe, basically, which consists of salt, sugar, cracked white peppercorns and dill, which you use to cure the fish. And in the olden days in Scandinavia, what they used to do was to put the fish together with the mix, bury it in the ground, and that would preserve it, and then they could take out the salmon when they wanted. Over the years I used the recipe which I actually learned how to do in Scandinavia, which consists of producing a mix which is salt and brown sugar. Very important to use brown sugar for something like this. The mix that we use for Gravlax, because it stays 48 hours on the fish, is rather more sugar than salt, which means in this mix I use 45% by weight of salt and 55% by weight of sugar. Okay, so the salt and sugar mix I have here. The other two ingredients are white peppercorns, and what we normally do with that, in order to get the best flavour, we take some whole white peppercorns and we put them into a mortar and pestle, and we then crack them at the time so that we get the best of the flavour coming out in it. Because you can't beat peppercorns that have just been crushed and cracked. The other essential ingredient, and the most important ingredient by far for the recipe, is dill. Now, it's not always possible to have fresh dill, which is the perfect thing to use. So always a good standby for something like that is to have dill weed. So I have dill weed here which is dried. Not the perfect thing to use. But if you don't have fresh dill, you don't have any choice, so that would be what I would use quite a lot of the time, because at this time of year it's not really practical to have dill growing in Ireland, because we've only a week or two ago had the last of the frosts. So there's our peppercorns all crushed, so they're ready to go in. In the classic recipe in Scandinavia, what they always did was to take the sugar and salt mix, put the peppercorns with it, chop up fresh dill and mix it all together, and then put it on, as a sandwich onto the one fillet, and then put the other fillet on the top. Over the years I found that it's actually probably a better idea, and I find it gives me something with much more flavour, that I put the things on kind of separately. So what I do is I coat the sides of the fish with the dill, then I sprinkle the peppercorns on, which enables me to get a nice even coating of peppercorns, and then afterwards I put the salt and sugar mix on, and I think you actually get a much better product, because it means that the things which are imparting the flavour, namely the dill and the peppercorns, are in direct contact with the sides of the fish, and then the mix is on top, and that then cures the fish afterwards. So I do it as a stepwise process, and put the dill on, then put the peppercorns on, then make the sandwich with the mix, and I shall show you how I do it now. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to sprinkle a nice even coating of the dried dill all over fish. Like so. Quite a thick coating. Put it onto the second one. If you have fresh dill, always use that in preference to the dried stuff because you're going to get a better flavour. But as I say, sometimes it's not always available. This you can take off the shelf and use at any time. So it is actually very handy, and it still gives you an extremely good product, which I think is probably the nicest way that you can possibly eat a salmon. Now, that's that done. Okay, right, now we have the crushed white peppercorns here, so what we do is we spread them over as evenly as we can, and it actually makes it nice and easy when you have the dill there because it tends to hold them in place. So it's actually very handy. So we spread that neatly over like that. So that's our coating, and then just in order to make it nice and easy to handle, what I'm then going to do is put a bit of paper towel over the top and just press it so that it will then hold everything in place on the sides like that. So it makes it easier when we're making our sandwich of the fillets and the curing mix. So that's the first part, and you can see that when you do it like this, you've got direct contact with the dill and with the peppercorns, which definitely helps to improve in terms of the flavour. So then we need a container that we can put the fish in that will hold it, because when you cure it with the salt and sugar mix on top of it, you get a lot of liquid coming out, so you want something which is going to contain it and not have it going all over the place. So we take one fillet and we lay it neatly inside our container like that. Make sure my hands are dry. So there you can see, that's the first fillet which is ready. Then we take our salt and sugar mix, which is already prepared, and then we make a nice even generous coating, about ½ an inch of mix all over the top of the fillet like that. And we don't need to put it on the second one because the second one is going to go inverted on top of that. So once we have that like that, we then take our second fillet, which hopefully we won't have everything falling off because we've pressed it down, and then we smartly take it, lay it on top of the other one so it makes a nice sandwich like that. And if you wish, you can add just a little bit of the mix on the top to help the curing process. So you can see this is a very quick and a very easy process. It takes very little time to do it. All we have to do now is we cover this and we then put a weight on top of it so that it's somewhat compressed. Normally, if you do a full side of fish, you'd leave it for 24 hours, take it, turn it over, put the weights back on top and leave it for another 24 hours and then it will be ready. With something like this, it will probably need a little bit less time, so probably about 18 hours will be fine. But all we need to do is now take it, put a little bit of foil over the top, really just to protect the fish, and something which we can then put a weight on in order to press it a little bit. So once we have it like that, and what I would normally use then is something like a litre juice container, which I'll just get now. So all we need to do is take a little bit of weight, not too much, that's about a kilo. So we lay that neatly on top, and then we take that and we put it in the fridge, and then after 18 to 24 hours we then turn it over to finish it off, and then I will show you how we actually treat it after that. So then that's ready to go into the fridge.